Hello and welcome back to the channel. In the previous video, we created our first Java program. And in this video, we're going to be seeing how we can take user input in Java. To see this, we're going to create a new class. So we're going to go to our package and we're going to go to new and we're going to pick class. And we're going to give our class a name. We're going to call it addition. And since we want a main method in our class, we're going to make sure public static void main is checked, and we're going to click on finish. When we want to make any program more dynamic, the first thing we need to consider is how to take user input. And in Java, to take user input, there's a class that we have to import. To import a class, we're going to be using the import keyword followed by the name of the class that we want to import. And when we import a class, we can use all the public methods or functionalities in that class in our own code. So here we're going to import java.util.scanner. Another thing we can see here is the concept of packages. Simply put, packages are folders that store Java classes. So when we say java.util.scanner, we're saying that inside the Java folder, there's a util folder, and inside the util folder, we can find a class named scanner. So when we created our first program, we were given an option to provide a package name. So what that meant was in our project, a folder with the name we provide would be created, and in that folder, our Java file would have been stored. The usefulness of using packages is when we want to import our own classes. So if we don't provide a package, and if our class is in the default package, we won't be able to import our class from a different location. Now, once we've imported the scanner class, in order to use it, we need to create an object. As we said in the beginning, a class is a blueprint or a recipe. So to actually use it, we're going to have to create a scanner object. And to do that, first we're going to put in the name of the class, which is scanner. Then we're going to give our object a name. In this case, we're going to call it input. And we're going to set it equal to new. And we're going to have the class name again, which is scanner. And in parentheses, we're going to pass in system.in. And finally, to end our statement, we're going to add a semicolon. So here we have scanner, which is the class name. Then we give our object a name, which in this case we gave it input. And we set it equal to new scanner, and in parentheses we pass in system.in. Previously we saw that system.out represents output, and the opposite, system.in, represents input. Now using this object, we can access different functionalities related to taking input. Next, we're going to see what variables are. Variables are named containers that are used to store different types of values. In Java, we can store strings, numbers, or Boolean values. So to define a variable, first we're going to put in the type of data that variable is going to contain. Then we're going to give that variable a name. And optionally, we can also give it a value directly in the same line. So for example, if we wanted to create a variable called number1 that is going to store a data of type integer, we're going to say int, then we're going to give the variable name, which is number1, and optionally we can give it a value. So here the value 10 is going to be stored in the variable number1. Now giving it an initial value is optional. We can also leave number1 as it is. Other types of data we can store in a variable include string for storing string variables. One thing to note here is that string is going to be spelled with a capital S. We can also have Boolean values, which means this variable is going to store either true or false. We can also store decimal values using double or float. But for now, we're going to be using the int data type. So what we're going to do now is create an application that takes two numbers from the user, and it's going to display the sum of the two numbers. So we need two variables to store those numbers. We already have number 1, so we're going to create another variable called number 2. Next, we're going to prompt the user to enter a number. We can do that using system.out.print, and the prompt is going to be enter the first number. And next, we're going to use the object we created. Since we want to take in an integer input, we're going to use input.nextInt. And since it's a method, we need to have parentheses after the method name. Now, once we've taken the input, we want to store it in one of our variables. To do that, we're going to say number 1 is equal to the input statement. So this is going to take in an integer input, and it's going to store it in the number 1 variable. Now we need to do the same thing for the second number, so we're going to have system.out.print, and we're going to prompt the user to enter the second number. And again, we're going to use the input object, and since we want to take in an integer, we're going to use nextInt, and we're going to store that value in the number 2 variable. Finally, if we want to store the sum in a variable, we can do that. So we're going to create another int variable, and we're going to call it sum. And we're going to set sum equal to the sum of the two numbers. So we're going to have number 1 plus number 2. Finally, to display the sum, we're going to use a printf statement. So we're going to have system.out.printf. And first we need to provide our format. So our format is going to be the sum of the two numbers is followed by a placeholder. So we've seen the string placeholder, which is %s, and the placeholder for an integer value is going to be %d. And finally, we can add a new line. And for the arguments, we need to pass in an integer value. In our case, we're going to pass in sum. And finally, to finish off our statement, we're going to add a semicolon. Now we can save our file, and we're going to run it. It's going to ask us to enter the first number. We're going to give it 3. It's going to ask us to enter the second number. We're going to give it 2. And when we press enter, it displays the sum of the two numbers is 5. So in this application, we took in an integer value, but if you want to take in other types of data, you can do that by accessing different methods. So for example, if you wanted to take in a double value, you would say next double, and this is going to take a double value from the user and it's going to store it somewhere. Now we're getting an error. That is because our number 1 variable is of type int, but if we change this to double, then our error disappears. So this is the basics to taking input in Java. In the next video, we're going to be looking at conditional statements. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more programming content.